This is the latest mainline title in the Sonic the Hedgehog series developed by Sonic Team. It's one of the most ambitious titles released for this franchise due to dramatic changes to the gameplay and a story written by Ian Flynn, best known for his work on the IDW's Sonic comic series. This is Sonic Frontiers. The story actually begins not in-game, but via the free webcomic released on the official Sonic Twitter account dubbed Sonic Frontiers Prologue Convergence. In it, we learn that Sonic and Tails are on their way to the Starfall Islands, the setting for the game, as the Chaos Emeralds have gathered there. But first they need to meet up with Amy as she's on a different island. They see that she's fighting Eggman and his robots and of course help her out. After the fight, the trio discovered that this was all a diversion to keep them from getting to the Starfall Islands. Meanwhile, Eggman is already at Kronos Island planning his latest scheme to acquire and control the technology of a long-lost civilization known as the Ancients. Now in-game, Eggman attempts to carry out his plan by placing his newly developed AI module onto a mysterious portal device. It then spawns these robots created with the Ancients' technology. Things seem to be going well until the AI module begins to spark and initiates a protective initiative after running simulations. More on this later. Eggman tries to stop the AI but is then pulled into the portal along with it. Now to Sonic and friends. They make their way to the Starfall Islands but are ambushed by a mysterious wormhole. They're then pulled into it and separate from each other. This event brings Sonic into cyberspace. More on this later. After escaping cyberspace, Sonic wakes to find that Tails and Amy are missing. Suddenly, a disembodied voice speaks to Sonic, calling him the Key since he managed to escape cyberspace on his own, and gives him vague instructions on how to find his friends. Later on, we find out that Eggman is trapped in cyberspace with seemingly no way out. Later on, we find that Amy is trapped in some kind of cyber prison thing. After freeing her, we learn that she's still partially trapped in cyberspace, but can still move around freely in the real world. At the same time, the prison becomes this corrupted energy which flows into Sonic himself. It gives him a new combat ability, more on this later, but also seems to be harming him. This will amount to something later on. Then we encounter the game's first Titan. This is a gargantuan foe that is accompanied by a mysterious girl who can stop it at will and simply tells Sonic to leave the island. Of course, when Sonic refuses, she reactivates the Titan and it attacks him. Sonic tries to fight back, but the Titan grabs and throws him, sending him through pillars and onto the side of a mountain. How Sonic even lives through this is beyond me. Of course, he does have a history of falling from outer space to the Earth face first. Back to the mysterious girl, we learned that her name is Sage. She is the AI created by Eggman to take control of the Ancients' technology. You can encounter her in the open zone areas, more on those later, and she'll constantly tell Sonic how his actions are endangering the islands amongst other negative things. At the same time, she's also trying to understand emotions and why Sonic keeps trying to succeed despite things seeming futile for him. Also in the open zone area, you can encounter the friend of Sonic's you've saved from their respective cyber prison. This will lead to you meeting the Cocos, which are these mysterious rock creatures that for some reason Sonic's friends can understand, but not him. The Cocos have specific problems that need solving, and of course Sonic is on the case. More on this later. As you keep helping the Cocos and interact with Sonic's friends, you learn that these creatures are remnants of the Ancients as shown in these flashback cutscenes where they're in these specific situations. Eventually, Sonic will gather the Chaos Emeralds, defeat the Titan of an island, and move on to the next one to rescue another friend. The next one in this case is Knuckles. Now why is Knuckles here? Well, we have to go out of the game once again and talk about the animated short released on the official Sonic YouTube channel called Sonic Frontiers Prologue Divergence. In this short, we see Knuckles guarding the Master Emerald as he should. We also get to see a bit of backstory here on how his ancestors were trying to steal the power of the Master Emerald, which was also shown in Sonic Adventure. Knuckles then decides to explore the island a bit, specifically in the Sky Sanctuary Zone where he helps a Chow obtain a mask, stumbles upon a portal gear, more on this later, discovers the cyber portal and places the gear into it, and is then transported to one of the Starfall Islands. He then encounters the Ancients' robots, smashes them up, encounters Sage, and before he knows it, he's in that same cyber prison Amy was trapped in. At this point, it's the same song and dance. You go to an island, release one of Sonic's friends from the cyber prison, then keep interacting with them and Sage before moving on to the next one. Things change up a bit once Sonic gets to the 4th island, which is more of a plot filler. You see, in this area, these extremely tall pillars emerge from the ground, and the disembodied voice tells Sonic to disable them. Each time Sonic disables one of the towers, a flashback cutscene about the Ancients is shown, revealing more details about their past. At the same time, and just like when Sonic was freeing his friends, he absorbs more cyber energy before becoming cyber corrupted. As Tails says, he's stuck between dimensions. He's actually unable to move, it seems. Then the disembodied voice reveals themselves as the danger that the Ancients had to deal with in the past. Then, of course, and y'all know what's coming, Sonic is freed from his cyber corruption with the power of friendship! I mean, look, at this point, with all that this story has had to offer up until now, I can put up with it. Afterward, Sonic is suddenly just at the last island? As if he teleported there or something? There's no one to save from a cyber prison, but you do get to talk to Sage more here, but as an ally rather than an enemy. Once the emeralds are gathered on this island, Eggman shows up and hands him the last emerald, which is very painful for him to do. And Sonic goes off to defeat the last Titan. Then the evil energy escapes from the Titan and into outer space. Sage tells Eggman that Supersonic alone won't be enough to defeat the evil energy, and Eggman seems uncharacteristically tugged by the heartstrings? Sage takes control of the Titan that Sonic had just defeated, and they go and chase the evil energy into space. Eggman then says to himself,
"Be careful, dear daughter."
Oh my god, guys. Eggman? A dad? No way! I can't believe this! It is then revealed that the evil energy is known as the End, and it seems to have taken over an asteroid. The End just kind of trash talks through the whole fight. Eventually the fight ends, Sage seemingly gives her life to contain the explosion, Sonic returns to Earth with his friends, and Eggman is currently coping with the loss of his AI daughter. You know, despite disturbing an ancient land and causing trouble like usual, I'm kind of feeling for this guy right now. Then there's a post-credits scene where Sonic and friends are about to fly away from the islands. Sonic mentions that his friends have big plans. This likely alludes to Amy sharing her love around the world, Knuckles leaving Angel Island more often, and Tails becoming less and less of a sidekick. Then there's another post-credits scene where we learn that Sage is not destroyed, and now I can't wait for Egg Dad in future games. Overall, the story in Frontiers is a huge step up from recent 3D titles. There's actually moments that give more characterization to Sonic's friends in Eggman than ever before. It was also interesting to learn about the Ancients' past, which at the same time explains how the Chaos Emeralds are from space. I do like Sage as a character, though I was slightly disappointed that she didn't amount to being as much of a threat as Sega kinda seemed like they were setting her up to be. I also appreciate the references to past titles and even mentioning characters that weren't initially part of the modern Sonic canon, such as Styx from the Boom universe and Tangle from the IDW comic series. Pretty much everything in this story has me very intrigued for what the future holds. After clearing the initial tutorial area on Kronos Island, the game straight up tells you that Sonic is free to explore the island and gather Chaos Emeralds. This is your main goal on each island. To obtain Chaos Emeralds, you'll need to obtain vault keys from the cyberspace portals. And in order to get into the cyberspace portals, you'll need portal gears which are obtained by defeating guardian enemies. Also, there's the memory tokens. These collectibles are scattered all over the open zone areas, and you'll need to collect a certain amount of them in order to talk to Sonic's friends and progress the story. As you continue interacting with Sonic's friends, you'll then end up playing missions involving the Cocos, and some of these will net you the remaining emeralds needed to eventually confront the boss of each island. Each island has a puzzle to solve before the boss fight. On Kronos Island, you have to solve this huge laser puzzle. Admittedly, I spent way too much time on this one. On Ares Island, there's this simple crane puzzle. It's pretty reminiscent of those building block toys for toddlers, the ones that it's a specific shape that you stick in the cube, that thing. And on Chaos Island, there's a pinball machine inside the volcano where you have to get a high score. I do enjoy video pinball to an extent, but I could completely understand why people have a problem with the high score being as high as it is. Like, it's just absurd. I think Frontier's gameplay structure is overall a refreshing change of pace from the level-to-level gameplay we've had with this series up until now. I think it's safe to say that Frontiers is a boost game, but with a twist. You see, the boost in this game is different because it's no longer an attack. In Unleashed and Onward, you'd boost right through enemies without a care in the world. It's been an extremely powerful tool in Sonic's arsenal to not only have a continuous burst of speed, but to also eliminate all foes in his path. Also, the boost is tied to a stamina meter rather than requiring ring or wisp energy. There's the new side loop ability that unlocks towards the beginning of the game. We actually see Sonic do this in the original teaser trailer for the game. This move allows Sonic to do various things such as launch enemies into the air, solve puzzles, find items in the ground, and if you draw an infinity symbol, you'll have an unlimited boost gauge for a limited time. You can actually do the side loop all you want, and maybe even try to get a bit silly with it. Sonic also has the drop dash from Mania, and yeah, it works the way it should. Though, because Frontiers isn't a classic style Sonic game, Sonic won't gain additional speed when he rolls down hills. The drop dash in Frontiers is mainly meant for going uphill, or falling in style. Now we have to address the elephant in the room, the combat. Like in other titles, Sonic can perform the homing attack as well as stomping and sliding. But now he can also punch and kick the foes into submission. There really hasn't been an actual combat system put in a mainline Sonic title since the Werehog and Unleashed. But the difference is, they gave a slower version of Sonic a classic God of War-like moveset, whereas in Frontiers, he has a moveset that takes advantage of his signature speed. Attack sequences usually begin with the homing attack, and this will destroy weaker enemies. Then with stronger enemies, Sonic will continue his assault with melee attacks and flashy special moves you can unlock and follow up with. Early on, you unlock the Phantom Rush, which, when the combo meter is maxed out, increases the damage of Sonic's attacks. When I first played the game, Sonic seemed kind of overpowered even without unlocking a lot of the special attacks. For example, he has a move called the Sonic Boom, which if you just hold the left trigger, he will unleash a barrage of projectiles, which is actually unlimited. Like, he can just do it all he wants. I mean, granted, it kind of shifts the camera in a very specific way, but yeah, you can just spam this move indefinitely until like Sonic lands or something, and it's just, it's wild. It's just he literally just has a gun the whole game. Also, Sonic has a parry, and the thing with this parry is that you don't actually have to time it too well. You could just hold it indefinitely and parry all incoming attacks. Also, the parry keeps Sonic airborne for quite a while, and I really don't know why they allowed this to happen, but it is what it is. But overall, the combat is flashy and fun. It's definitely not meant to be like something as in-depth as, let's say, Devil May Cry's combat, but it's certainly flashy, and Sonic is kind of OP. I mean, I would say for Sonic Team's latest foray into combat in a Sonic game, it's not the worst thing I've ever played. I think there's some balancing issues with it, but overall, it's fine. The the default controls in this game will seem pretty strange at first if you're coming from playing the previous titles in this series. Let's start with the attack button. Using a DualSense for reference, as this is what I used, square is the attack button. Just pressing this near an enemy, even without jumping, makes Sonic do a homing attack. Triangle is for the side loop ability. So where are boost and ring dash mapped to? Why, the boost is mapped to the right trigger, of course, and the ring dash is mapped to... get ready for this one. The left stick button. As in, you click the left stick to ring dash. These were the two actions remapped to different buttons that hit me the hardest. I did end up getting used to it in the end just because it makes sense in the grand scheme of things. By having boost on a trigger, you can boost around the area while moving the camera. I guess left stick click makes sense for ring dash, considering that's a button you wouldn't press very often, and the instances where you ring dash are few and far in between. The rest of the controls are pretty standard, I'd say. Also, in the options menu, you can adjust Sonic's speed. Actually, before the game even starts, you have a choice in terms of difficulty and either the action or high speed styles of play. Action style makes Sonic move a bit slower and is recommended for people who aren't familiar with Sonic games. High speed style is for real gamers, oh yeah! If you want to control how Sonic feels in-game, there's several dials in the options menu for adjusting Sonic's movement and turning speed. It's actually crazy that they put this option in here. They really are trying to make sure as many people as possible can enjoy an adventure with our Blue Boy. The open zone areas are the bread and butter of the Frontiers experience. You'll freely roam around the islands finding collectibles and secrets, fighting enemies, and completing all sorts of platforming challenges and puzzles. If you look around just one area, you'll notice elements taken from traditional Sonic stages littered about. You're pretty much free to approach these however and whenever you'd like. I found that as I kept running around the open zone areas just doing things, I never found myself to be bored. Even when I knew I had to collect a ton of memory tokens in order to progress the story, I never found the task to be daunting as I looked forward to speeding around the islands. There aren't too many themes for the open zone areas. You have, of course, Kronos Island, which is the typical first area, grassy, plain place, you know? Then we have Ares Island, which is the desert-themed island. And then there's Chaos Island, which is the volcanic, mountainous-themed island. The 4th and 5th islands unfortunately have the same theming as Kronos Island, and it's pretty disappointing, honestly. The 4th island is basically an extension of Kronos Island, and the 5th island is a completely separate island off Kronos, but still looks the same. Like, I at least wish the 5th island looked a little different, you know? When you clear certain puzzles, you'll unlock these incredibly long rails that you could use to grind from place to place. Furthermore, if you boost on one of these that have an upward slope, then jump off, you'll be flying through the air for a bit. It's actually pretty satisfying to do. Clearing puzzles in the open zones reveals more of the map, which can be viewed on the map screen. You can view your progress here, including the amount of collectibles you have, and you can place markers on the map in order to make your own destinations. There is fast travel, but you'll have to fish up these certain scrolls for the Elder and Hermit Cocos first to warp towards them. Additionally, if you reveal the whole map, you'll unlock fast travel between portals. Speaking of the Elder and Hermit Cocos, let's talk collectibles. So of course this is a Sonic game, therefore there's rings. As long as you're holding one ring, you'll never fall to enemy attacks. Then there's skill pieces. These are primarily collected by defeating enemies and work as the game's XP system. The more you collect, the more skill points you'll acquire in order to unlock new skills for Sonic. Then there are the red seeds of power and blue seeds of defense. You collect these from various areas and bring them to the Hermit Coco in order to upgrade Sonic's strength and defense. Increasing strength is what it is. Sonic will hit harder. I believe having more defense causes Sonic to lose less rings when he takes damage. Next are the Lost Coco. You can find plenty of the Cocos scattered across the open zones. There isn't a set amount of them to find, but trust me, they're everywhere. You can bring the Lost Coco to the Elder Coco and choose to increase either your ring or speed stats with them. I personally didn't find too much value in leveling up my ring stat early on, as you're able to have a faster boost if you reach your ring cap, and increasing it will make it harder to get the boost. The speed stat, I felt marginal differences for overall, though maxing it out grants you the faster boost the whole time, and I think that's absolutely worth grinding for. Though what sucks is that you can only gain one level at a time, meaning that if you have several Coco on you, you'll be sitting there for a while getting a stat up several levels while watching the same animation play over and over and over from the Elder Coco. Meanwhile, the Hermit Coco could just take several of your attack and defense seeds and get your stats up in a flash. Why? This feels like a massive oversight. The enemies found in the open zone areas can range from simple grunts to the gargantuan guardians. Then there's this thing. Yeah, look at this. This enemy just takes over the camera. That's OP, please nerf. Seriously though, some enemies just kind of take control of the camera or force Sonic into an unwanted encounter. It's pretty annoying when I just want to run around and explore. Then there's the Guardian Shark. Holy crap, dude. This thing just drags you all across the desert for like 5 minutes, and if your attack stat isn't high enough to destroy it on the first opening, you're gonna get taken for a ride one more time. A lot of the Guardians have these attack sequences where Sonic could end up grinding rails, being swept up into a tornado, or being launched several thousand feet into the air. It's pretty wild. Though, I think the most unique Guardian I faced was the Ghost. I completely missed this thing on my initial playthrough, but on the last island, if you interact with this weird statue, Ghost will appear and will start sapping your rings away. Yeah, crazy, right? You can't attack Ghost directly. Instead, you have to side loop other statues to damage it. At the same time, Ghost sends its grunts towards you, so you have to deal with both your rings evaporating away and tiny flying enemies trying to distract you and slow you down. Actual insanity. My own grievances aside, the open zone areas are a very welcome addition to this game. I checked out a lot of fan games where it would take place in an open area where Sonic can just run around and boost, and now it's really nice to see it being officially done. These are the traditional boost-style Sonic levels you can access by obtaining portal gears in the open zone areas. It should be noted that your stat levels don't carry over here. You can't even use your combat abilities here other than the homing attack. There's only 4 visual themes for these stages, being Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and some kind of city theme? I do wish there were more themes, as there's a lot of these levels in the game, but then again, most of these levels are short. They'll last you on average about a couple minutes to complete. These levels are apparently based off Sonic's memories, so the majority of them are remakes of stages from past titles. Also, these stages are only 2D or 3D. There's no shifting between perspectives, meaning levels remade from past Boost-style games have their 2D and 3D sections made into separate levels in cyberspace. Why do I get this feeling of deja vu? Why do I get this feeling of deja vu? The stages from Adventure 2 are mostly faithful, I'd say. The rest of the stages are original designs. The last island actually holds the majority of those. There's 4 objectives to clear in cyberspace, being to reach the goal, get an S rank, collecting a certain amount of rings, and finding all of the red star rings. Completing each of these goals nets you a vault key used to unlock Chaos Emeralds. You don't have to do all of these at once, so it's advised to keep replaying the stage until you clear the goals and leave out with 4 vault keys. I think because these levels are so short, they're easily replayable. That'll also make attempts at getting a better time not so tedious. After beating the game, you'll unlock Arcade Mode. You'll then be able to freely choose each stage rather than having to travel to each of the respective cyber portals from open zone areas. This is great if you just want to boot up the game and speed through a few stages, or maybe all of them? While we're on the topic of speed, I've already mentioned that the boost is different in this game compared to the past Sonic Boost games. However, it doesn't feel as fast here. In fact, it almost feels like you're moving slower the more you boost? I know that sounds weird, but I recall an official Sega rep demoing a cyberspace stage before the game released, and he was mashing boost. I guess he thought that was making Sonic go faster? I especially felt how sluggish the boost felt when playing the 2D stages. I don't really believe he's going slower the longer you hold the boost, but it sure does feel that way, right? Also, boosting in the air propels Sonic upward by a large margin. It can essentially act as a third jump, allowing you to reach higher paths. Another neat thing is that you can cancel your homing attack into a boost before you come in contact with your target. This allows you to zip across the air a far distance. It's a pretty neat mechanic that I'm sure a lot of speedrunners have taken advantage of. Overall, I enjoyed the majority of these stages. The ones remade from Adventure 2 are easily my favorites. The levels designed for this game are pretty nice too. I do wish there were more original designs, but at the same time I did enjoy making sort of a guessing game out of these stages. I doubt most people could even tell what's new and what's remade from a past game. And speaking of the past, can we finally leave Green Hill in the past? Please? You see those purple coins right there? Take them into that portal, man. Yeah, the one with the purple glow. Now you'll see our main man, Big. He gon' teach you how to fish. It's real easy. When you catch something, he'll give you these tokens, man. You could trade them in for some sweet prizes. They're mostly things you can find normally, but it's better to stock up here. But those egg memos? Man, not only can't you find them outside of here, but you'd be tripping if you didn't listen to those. They've got like bonus lore and references.
Who were the ancients? They predate any civilization by a wide margin. The Echidnas? Pfft. The Black Arms? Please. The Babylonians? Hardly. And yet they didn't seem to influence the world beyond these 3 piddly islands. Why? What stopped them from conquering the world?
Look at what you can catch. Fish, crustaceans, cephalopods, treasure chests, signposts, scrolls used to warp to the Hermit and Elder Cocos. That's just crazy. Who put those in the water? Hey man, did you notice those random nights where there's a meteor shower? It looks kinda tight, not gonna lie. When that happens, the enemies respawn. But then you could play slots, dude. Keep grabbing the glowing fragments on the ground to play the slot machine. More you get, more chances you get to play. The more purple coins you'll earn. Yeah, get that bread. Bring those coins back to our main man Big for more fishing action. The fishing spots become more expensive as you progress to further islands than the first. At the same time, that reward increases by the catch. Aw, yeah, son. Stocking up on Lost Cocos at Big Shop will get your ring and speed stats up in a jiffy. Heck, you could even buy vault keys if you want to skip those trips to cyberspace. Where's this man Big get his stock from, though? You know what? That's none of my business. I'm just here to do business, you feel me? After collecting the 6 Chaos Emeralds, you'll need to complete a challenge in the open zone area before challenging the boss. The boss has the last emerald and you'll need to climb up to them in order to get it and transform into Supersonic. This is unprecedented for a 3D Sonic game, as Supersonic is usually saved for the end or is a bonus for collecting rings or is DLC. Horses! It helps that this game has an actual combat system, as now you can punch and kick these bosses as Supersonic. Like, you can just fly in and wail on them and throw in special attacks. It's amazing! Usually as Supersonic in older games, you're trying to charge at enemies with a burst of speed and damage them. Midway through the boss fights, they'll change their tactics slightly, but ultimately you just pummel on these bosses until you get to watch a cutscene where Supersonic destroys them. Because you're Supersonic, you're invincible. At the same time though, you're working off a time limit. You have to defeat the bosses quickly before your ring counter hits 0, otherwise it's game over. Just keep rushing the boss down and use your parry at opportune times to defeat them. Giganto is the first boss, and it's a pretty straightforward fight. It'll try to knock you away with a big swing attack, but you just gotta parry it and counterattack. At the second phase, Giganto unleashes lasers from its back which don't really do anything to you, but Giganto will try to clap you, like literally, and fire a giant laser from its mouth which can be repelled via a rapid button press QTE. Next is the Wyvern boss, and this one's a lot easier in my opinion. You fly around the skies of Ares Island chasing this thing and parrying its projectiles and slash attacks to fight it. There's also a lot more QTE events in this fight than Giganto's. Then there's the night fight. fight. And yeah, I'm just gonna say it. This is the best boss in the game. So Knight has this shield which, after Sonic attacks it enough, launches off its arm with spinning blades. Sonic must stop the shield via QTE, and then he gets to ride it. He has to direct the shield back at Knight while avoiding a barrage of missiles. On the second phase, Knight throws the shield against the wall and it constantly ricochets all over the place. Sonic must of course parry it, but then has to aim it towards Knight as it rapidly circles around the arena. Lastly, there's Supreme. This fight is actually just like Gigantos, but with more projectiles. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, at one point it knocked me very far away, then tried to shoot me with a gun. I had to repel it via QTE, but otherwise, yeah. Kind of lackluster. Even though I wish these fights were a bit more challenging, I'd still say these are the best Supersonic fights ever made to this date. That does it for the bosses directly involving Supersonic, but if you play Frontiers on hard mode, you'll get to fight the End. This is a shoot-'em-up style fight where you switch between light and dark shots. Being in the light mode allows you to touch and destroy the light shots that the End fires at you, and the same applies to dark mode in terms of dark shots. By doing this, you'll build up a meter at the bottom of the screen which, when full, allows you to fire a powerful homing laser. There's actually a couple other parts of the game where you have to play a shoot-'em-up style minigame to progress. Someone at Sonic Team must have been a real fan of this kind of gameplay to have it be a part of a mainline Sonic game. All in all, this ensemble of bosses has delivered more engaging battles than past games. It's intriguing the kind of direction Sonic Team has taken for boss battles this time, especially since they allowed Super Sonic to be playable so early on. It makes me very excited for what they'll do in a future game.
I know that we will find our way. We'll do whatever it will take. And if we never reach the crowd, we'll take the whole thing down.
So first of all, for context, I played Frontiers on PC in 1440p resolution with the graphics cranked to the max. With all that said, the game looks fine enough. It's not like a crazy high fidelity game or anything, but graphically it's nearly on par with Forces. There are some improvements in terms of texture work, but for the most part, I'm just playing a high resolution Nintendo Switch game on PC. Speaking of the Switch version, Sega released a demo of Sonic Frontiers for the Switch. Conveniently for me, I get to try it out without having to double dip on this game. So how does that version fare? Well... yeah, it's not too great. The game runs in 30 FPS at a low resolution with zero anti-aliasing, fuzzy and blurry textures. Like, pretty much, if you're familiar with how powerful the Switch is, you know that an open-ended game like this just won't look and run the best. If you have any other option in terms of hardware for playing Sonic Frontiers, then steer clear of the Switch version. At least the load times seem okay. And then of course, I have to address the pop-in. So as you're running around the open zone areas, as I mentioned before, there's a ton of platforming elements scattered about, a bunch of rails and junk. So what's happening there is, as you're running around, these elements just kind of pop in. Again, as I said, I'm playing on PC with the maximum graphics, and yeah, the pop-in still happens. It's just, apparently that's hard-coded on the Switch version, and that just had to be a thing on the other versions. So, it kinda sucks. That just is what it is. I found it to be pretty jarring as I was exploring the islands for more memory tokens, but ultimately it was not hurting my experience like 100%. It was jarring, yes, but yeah, not a deal breaker. To briefly touch upon the UI for this game, it's fine. I don't have much to say about the UI when in-game, but let me talk about the map screen. It looks like any standard video game map screen, including an option to filter out all the elements but the one you're trying to focus on. Here's the thing. As I mentioned earlier, there's fast traveling. In order to do this on the map screen, you have to change the map filter to quick travel. I'm not sure what other game does this, but I personally felt that this was unnecessary. You should just be able to choose either the Elder or Hermit Coco, or Portal if you would build the whole map, from the All Icons section. Also, as a side note, there's no minimap in game. I don't think it's super necessary here, but it would have been nice. Also, when you're in the pause menu where the skills, save data, and options are, you have to choose the section above to then access the stuff below it. It threw me off for a bit, but I got used to it. Up until now, you've been almost exclusively listening to the soundtrack for Frontiers. This is one of the largest soundtracks featured in a Sonic game with many genres covered. The music and cutscenes do their job by matching the mood on screen and features mostly orchestrated stuff. The music for the open zone areas are mostly subtle/environmental tracks, which works well since you'll be listening to them for hours while exploring. However, these songs actually change depending on how many Chaos Emeralds you've collected. When facing a Guardian enemy, you'll hear a track which evokes a threatening mood. In cyberspace levels, the songs are mostly upbeat and techno sounding. The boss themes channel that early 2000s Crush 40 energy that I oh so love.
It's time to face your fears when your time has come and gone. I'll be the one to carry on, and you can throw me to the wolves, 'cause I am undefeatable. I'm hanging on to the other side. I won't give up till the end of me.
Then of course there's the main theme. And yeah, it's good, it's catchy, it works. I don't have too much to say about it other than it's welcome here.
I I'm here, reaching far across these new frontiers. With my life, I fight this fear. In my hands, I hold the ones I love. Walk forward through the cold tide. Always a new horizon.
There's loads of other tracks to talk about, but I'd be here forever talking about it. As a side note though, I just realized that when you catch a fish at one of Big's fishing spots, it plays a jingle which sounds exactly like the beginning of the song that plays when Big actually catches a bite on his lure. Neat touch. Sonic Frontiers comes in two versions, the Standard Edition and the Digital Deluxe Edition. Digital Deluxe grants you the Explorer's Treasure Box, which contains Amy's memory tokens, which pretty much speeds up story progression on the first island, a Portal Gear, which just lets you skip a Guardian fight to get to cyberspace earlier. I mean, cool I guess? Chaos Emerald Vault Keys, which just lets you skip a trip to cyberspace? I mean, cool I guess? And additional gloves and shoes for Sonic, which is pretty much the reason why you'd want this pack. In addition to the Explorer's Treasure Box, you also get the digital art book with mini soundtrack. This, at least on Steam, is a separate app from the game that lets you view art and listen to some music in a tiny window that I can't view at a higher resolution. Thanks, Sega, thanks. Pre-ordering the game back then also got you the Adventurer's Treasure Box, which is just full of collectibles you can easily get while playing. But hey, nothing wrong with a head start, right? Back to those new shoes and gloves for Sonic. Yes, there's alternate outfits in the game. Unfortunately, they're all DLC. You can't unlock any outfits simply by playing the game. Though, with the exception of the Adventurer's gloves and shoes, they're all free. Heck, if you signed up for Sega's newsletter back then, you could even get Sonic soap shoes from Sonic Adventure 2. Finally, shortly after the game launched, Sega announced that Frontiers would be getting a whole post-launch DLC roadmap, which is all free. A lot of the stuff here looks promising, but the big one is Wave 3. This will include a new story and additional playable characters. I'm thinking that Tails, Knuckles, and Amy will all be playable. Now Sage? I don't know. She might be the antagonist of the new story or whatever. I guess we'll have to see. Yeah, as you'd expect, there's quite a modding scene going on for this game. This is pretty much why I grabbed this game on PC. The ability to just mess around with some random skin or gameplay mods adds a lot to this game. Let's see what we got here. Hey look guys, Blazes in Sonic Frontiers! Like, zoinks dude! It's me, a Super Mario! Now it is truly Sonic of the Wild. Oh, look at this! Sonic with higher res textures and reflections in his eyes. Now you see me, now you don't. And now, I'm a real gamer. Yeah, suffice to say, there's a lot of neat mods people are making for this game right now, and I'm pretty excited to see how far it comes along. Sonic Frontiers is a great Sonic game. It's not perfect, of course. In fact, it's quite flawed in some areas. But it's great to see Sonic Team take this series into a different direction. Clearly it's paying off, as the game has sold about 3 million copies since November. It won't be everyone's cup of tea, of course, but I think we can all, at the very least, agree that Frontiers is a step in the right direction.
Now here we go, it's the end of the show. Hear them, they're calling.